Well, my name is Claude Rouas. My Hebrew name is Isaac. And Isaac, because was the man, I lost my parent when I was very young. And that man, Isaac, is the one who raised us. So he gave me his name when on my birth. And he was a very, very special human being. So that's it.
Was Isaac a relative or who was he?
He was, I'm sorry. He was my father's sister husband. So what was he? Anyway.
So you lost your parents when you were very young?
Yeah. My mother died, she was 36. And my father died, he was 49. So we were 6 children, 6 of us. And we had some parents from the father's side and the mother's side, but really we raised each other. We had an older brother, and he was the head of the family. He was the one who really, supported us and worked, and but both of them died when they were very young.
Wow, where were you? Where were you living?
In Algiers. When my mother died, I was in Oran, and then when my father died, which was 4 years later, in Algiers.
That's crazy. So were you all living with Isaac or with your brother?
We were living in Oran. We were living with Isaac. But the life in Oran was so, we didn't go to school. And my father's sister, who was the most incredible lady, but she was totally illiterate. And for her, school or anything regarding education had no importance whatsoever. So this is why we had lots of love from them, as much as she could give us. But my mother's sister, who lived in Algiers, came to see us one day in Oran and decided that that there was not the right way that we were being raised. So she took us one by one, and we moved from Oran to Algiers.
Did you have one of your siblings in that time who you really depended on, who you were very close to?
My older brother who died, and later on in life he became a steward on Air France, and he died on an airplane accident years ago. And so he was really the head of the family. To us he was everything. He was my father, my brother, my friend. He was a great guy.
Do you have memories of your parents? Do you remember them?
Yes, very little really. Mostly when we were...
Hold on 1 second.
I asked you what your memories are of your parents, if you have any memories.
Well, the memories that I have from my parents are mostly from France. And probably I was born in 1933. And probably in 1937, my father decided to take his family, my mother and the children that we were, and to go to France to better our life. He thought going there he would find a job, and we would make our life more comfortable. That I remember of that, because when we arrived in Paris, I was, I loved being with the family, and I loved, my parent had found an apartment. The apartment was a store, which had the front on the sidewalk, and then they had a little storage room. So the storage room was our bedroom. We all lived in one bedroom, and the front storage was our dining room, or where we ate. And those memories, I do remember that. But do I remember them from Algiers and Oran? Very little.
Do you have any
Even though it was later in life. But I don't remember, because my mother was very sick for a long time. And my father was very sick for a long time. I remember more my father than my mother.
What do you remember of him? Like visceral memories of him?
My mother was very strict, and I used to ride horses when I was young, and she was always yelling at me, that I remember, because she was afraid that I would hurt myself. And I remember we lived in a very small apartment in Oran, and I remember when she died, the custom over there where you put a body along the wall and put a sheet over them from, falling down. And that I remember very well, bending down and kissing my mother. She was wrapped in a sheet, like it's the way we were buried. This is what I remember of my mom. My dad, I remember him because my dad was a very special human being. He was also an illiterate, an alcoholic, but a very happy soul. He had no worry, no problem. He had no job. He had no money. He had nothing. But he had his spirit. And so I remember that of him. And I remember of him when he died. He was both of them died of cancer, my mother and father. And so it was a very lengthy death. So he suffered a lot, probably much more than my mother did. So those are the memories that I have of my father and mother.
How do you think, because you lost your parents when you were so young, how did that have a long-term impact on your life? Do you think it impacted your ability to be successful and to have a successful immigration?
Yes. I don't know how to. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I don't know how to.
What was
did
the
it impact my?
impact
Yeah.
it had on your life?
Yeah. Well, it did. The impact that I had from losing my parent. I wanted to be. I wanted to become. Successful in life. I wanted something out of life because I started. When I was 9 years old, I used to sell a ticket to the movie theater. 9 years old. I went to work as a tailor. I was not even 10. I had very, very hustling kind of a life. And so I wanted to do something. And the fact that we were poor, that we were orphaned, that we were, I don't want to say that we were very unhappy because we had the love from everybody around us. I don't want to say that we had a very unhappy youth, but it was not the most. When I see today around me, my grandchildren, the way they live, what they have, and what they can do, it's no comparison whatsoever. So I wanted to grab something out of life. I wanted to become something, and I was lucky and successful at it.
So, do you have any memories of like the rabbis coming into your home when your mother? You said you remember when your mother was wrapped in the shroud. Do you have any memories?
Not rabbi, but we had some professionals. Ladies that came and cried all night long. They were paid, and they cried. So that I remember. The rabbi part of it, I don't remember. I remember when I did my bar mitzvah. Thank you. When I did my bar mitzvah. Even for my bar mitzvah, I learned the prayer to do my bar mitzvah probably in 3 or 4 months, which today, when I see young people that, they have to learn the whole Hebrew, I did not. I learned my whole thing that I had to do, the prayer that I had to do. No, I don't have memories I'm escaping now. I don't remember what we're talking about.
Oh, I was asking if you had memories about rabbis. And all
Yeah,
that.
no, I do not. No, I do not. No, honestly, I don't.
So why did you have a bar mitzvah?
You know, why did I have a bar mitzvah? In Oran, my family, my aunt, which was my father's, who partially raised us, we followed traditions. We went to the synagogue on Yom Kippur. We went to the synagogue on Pesach. I didn't know anybody. I don't read Hebrew. I don't. I never. I wear the tillits now because I'm getting older. When I go to the synagogue, I'm much closer to the religion now than I was ever, and so that's that.
What languages did you speak with your family?
French.
Did you speak Arabic with them?
No. I spoke from, in Oran, the influence was Spanish. So we had a lot of Spanish. So I spoke a little Spanish, a little Arabic, but mostly French. And Algiers were Italians. So I spoke a little Italian, a little French, and a little Arabic. But mostly the main language that we spoke was French.
Can you tell me some of the foods that you ate for like Shabbat, some of the traditional Jewish dishes? Do you remember?
Couscous, and every Friday night we had couscous. What other dishes? The cuisine, the food from that region is entirely different than the food from the not the Sephardic, the other Jews. So we had we had a special beside the couscous. We had the regular food, not Jewish food. We had the tafina, which is a stew that we took on Friday night. We took it to the baker, leave it there overnight. We had a big casserole. It was an earth. We put our name on it, and we'd put it in the oven overnight, and we would go the following morning and pick it up. And then we'd eat the tafina, couscous, and we had lots of different salad because the weather was so warm over there. So we had a lot of salad, meatballs, and with peas, and nothing really special.
So of all of the Jewish holidays, which one was the fondest that you have the most memories from?
Yom Kippur.
What was Yom Kippur like in Oran?
Well, it was very strange because I've been doing Yom Kippur since I was 13 years old, from a bar mitzvah. I always did Yom Kippur. But when I do Yom Kippur here or when I go to the synagogue, I mean, people behave normally. So you fast all day for 24 hours. But over there in Algeria, Yom Kippur was, you could not talk to the man because they were very upset, they hadn't smoked, they hadn't put their powder in their nose, they had, so you could not talk to the man. And very often in the synagogue, around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, people would pass out. It was such a big thing. And so today, when I do Yom Kippur, I don't eat for the day, so what's the big thing? But over there, it was so much more intense. So this is what I remember of Yom Kippur in Algeria.
Are there any Algerian Jewish traditions that you remember clearly that are so distinct of Algerian Jews? Something that is so definitively Algerian Jewish?
The music. The music, which had a lot of influence in Oriental music. When you listen today, the Arab music from over there, from Algeria, the Arab music and the Jewish music, it has such a Oriental feeling, both of them, that's very often you have a hard time making the difference. So As of today, I have a hard time listening to some of the music because it makes me so sad and I start crying and it's, people send me some email with the music and all that and I don't want to look at it. I don't want to listen to it because it makes me very sad. That I remember very, very much of the tradition, of the Jewish tradition in Algeria.
We should, with regard to...
What is so definitively Algerian Jewish that you remember so clearly, and who were the musicians that you listened to?
Well, the thing that I remember the most from Algeria is the music. The music, which had a lot resemblance to Arab music. This is the way we were raised, the way we learn how to listen to the music. And this is what impresses me most as of today. I'm 80 years old. I still think of that music and I have a hard time because it makes me so homesick. It makes me so sad, of the stories that whatever the music tells you or the words, it can be so sad that I'm getting mixed up here. I'm sorry.
It's okay. You're doing fine. You're doing
You're
fine.
doing really
No, it's
good.
actually good. May I also say?
Okay, so let's...
Well, let's go back to music. Well, music, it can make me happy, it can make me sad, mostly sad, because it reminds me of the great evening that we used to have all together. And there are so many. A person who really brought all that music back with the French flavor is Enrico Macias, that who became very, very famous. All his song about the Jews and non-Jews who had to leave Algeria and North Africa to come back to France. They were most of them were born there. Some of them had gone there and lived there. They were, the window is open. I'm terribly sorry, but the door is open and it makes.
Here.
Okay, great. So whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Yes, the song that the famous Enrico Macias made, and one of them is J'ai quitté mon pays pour venir en France. J'ai quitté mon pays et toutes les belles femmes qui habitaient là-bas. I don't want to sing, but he was so great. He made all those beautiful songs, and it brings the memories. It brings you back to reality, to how beautiful life was. Again, we had nothing. We were very poor, but we didn't know any different. We were very happy with what we have. When I see today what we have now and what I had then, it's no comparison whatsoever. But we were happy, and the music was a big part of that happiness.
Was there anything else that was Jewish influence that was part of that happiness? Something from the culture that made it okay to be poor?
To be poor, not really, because it was part of life. We had little sandwich and we ate that sandwich and it was great because there was almost nothing in it, just a piece of bread. But we didn't know any better. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, I just want to know, why was it okay to be poor? What made it okay to be poor?
Because you had no choice, and our parents and our grandparents were like that. So it's not that we had lost everything. We never had anything. So for us, it was okay to be poor.
Do you remember your grandparents?
No, I do not. I do not remember my grandparent. because I left my family when I was 14 years old. From the age of 14 years old, I've lived on my own. At 14 years old, I went to the hotel and restaurant school. From the hotel and restaurant school, when I graduated, a couple of years, I lived at the school. I went to work in a hotel, where I lived in a hotel. Then I went to Paris. Then I was in the army. I went to Paris. So the reason I don't remember my grandparents is because I was always gone.
I have a suggestion, sir.
Yeah. Do you remember the synagogues at all? Can you explain them?
The synagogue. Well, the thing that I remember about the synagogue was when Papa Isaac, when the man that I have his name, when he died, and I loved him so that every morning I used to go to the synagogue. I used to wear the seferin and the talits every morning, but it was a small part of the synagogue where the men met, and every morning I read the Kaddish. I remember the synagogue when, as I said earlier, on Yom Kippur, when all those people would pass out, and one thing that I remember very well, that everybody had the worst breath because during the fasting, it was horrible. The whole synagogue was absolutely not a pleasant place to be. Those are the souvenir. It was beautiful. It was very the synagogue, mostly the synagogue in Oran, which we used to call La Grande Synagogue. It was a very, very special place. I mean, you walked in there, and there was something peaceful about it.
What about the neighborhood that you lived in Oran? What was it like? Can you describe it?
Well, it was called La Rue des Juifs. The street that I lived in Oran, the neighborhood, the street that I lived was called La Rue des Juifs, Rue de la Révolution, Rue des Juifs. And it was only Jews, because a good excuse or a good example that it was only Jews, on Yom Kippur, we had one chicken per member of the family to kill. And all along the street, you had all the rabbi killing the chicken, and then you had the young people cleaning them. And the whole street was totally taken over by the rabbi and by the chicken cleaning. So that makes you aware that you lived in Rue des Juifs. We lived in a very close neighborhood to Le Village Nègre, which was the Arab district. And very often we had a fight among neighborhood. The Jews against the Arab. Then, if as of today, why did we fight? Why did we have a war between the two of us? I don't know why. I guess we were raised like that. They were raised like that. But we were already, hitting each other. That I remember, and it was a very, very poor. All the people who lived on the Rue des Juifs were not wealthy, that I can remember. I guess the only one that I knew were poor, like I was.
What was your home like that you lived in?
The home that I lived in was, we lived with Maman Zoé, which was the wife of Papa Isaac, my father's sister. We lived with her. She had an apartment. She had an apartment with a little terrace, and it was okay. But my mother, before she died, we had found an apartment that was right across the street. And when I mean across the street were very, very narrow. So we lived right across the street, and the fourth floor of an old building. And it was a very, very very sad building because it was so dirty. You know, to go to the bathroom, you had to go in the hallway. And each time you went to the bathroom, you found some big rats, it was horrible. Those are the souvenir that I have, or the apartment that my mother and father had taken over. But this is where we lived. Very strict necessary.
Yeah. So in 1940 to 1941, life for the Jews in Algeria became very difficult.
No, in Paris. The life in 1940. In 1940, I was still in France. My brother Maurice, who died last year, was just born. No, Albert, I'm sorry, the youngest one. I'm sorry, the youngest one, Albert, was just born in 1940. And if I remember well, the German invaded Paris in June of 40. So my brother already was born. But the doctor had told my mother that she should not travel because she was not feeling well. She had a very bad delivery. And but within few months, my mother realized that life with a German were not going to be that great. So we went back to Algeria. But in 1940, we were in Paris and went back to Oran. And we lived in Oran from 1940 on.
Because I heard with Vichy France having power in Algeria, wasn't the property taken away from the Jews, and Jews were being kicked out of their jobs. Life in Algeria for Jews was also becoming difficult because of the French. Do you remember?
Life in Algeria was not that difficult. No, it was not. I mean, we were the dumb Jews. We were the like anywhere else in Europe. The Jews were not the greatest looked upon people, but it was nothing more than that. It was from the government itself. There was no differences that you were aware of.
And during that time, during World War II, what was the relationship like between the Jews and the Muslims in Algeria?
I think it was good. The relationship in Algeria between the Jews and the Arabs, honestly, I think they were good. The young people fought among themselves, but we lived in Algeria. We lived almost like the Muslim. We had their way of life. We very often were the old ladies, the old timers from those days used to dress almost like the Arabs. So I think there was no fight, there were still Jews and Arab, but I don't remember any ugliness.
Do you remember the Algerian resistance with the Jews the Jews started the Algerian resistance from...
The Jews started the Algerian resistance.
To fight the French in World War II.
No, I do not remember that fight of the Jews against the French. No, as I said earlier, in 1948, when I was 14 years old, I went into a hotel and restaurant school, and I'd lost contact. I was totally concentrated in my future. Do I remember? I don't remember any. I remember the Arabs raising their upraising. It was starting already, and in the 50s it was starting. You could feel it, but it was far from becoming what it had become in the 60s and the 50s and 60s.
Did you ever hear of a place called the Bedau? I don't know how you would pronounce it. Bedeau, Bedau camp. That was a camp that Jewish men in Algeria were sent to during World War II.
Never heard of that camp that the Jewish people lived. No, I don't remember any of that.
And so just to kind
of... my father was not very involved politically, religiously.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because of him, I don't want to blame him, but we were not involved with anything of
Exactly,
and
exactly.
regarding
This
to.
way, we do not deny that his
And a lot of other Jews from Arab countries were also very successful.
Well, I was successful, to repeat again. I was very fortunate to be at the right time, at the right place. I had met in Paris the owner of a restaurant in San Francisco called Ernie's Restaurant. And my wife then was Bella Darby. She was offered to make a movie in Hollywood. So I said, well, let's go together. She went on her own, I went on my own. I came to San Francisco. First I came to Chicago. And I spent 3 days in Chicago. Before coming to Chicago, I had spent a month in south of France with Bella to take a vacation before visiting United States. So I came in June 19th of 1960. And coming to Chicago was like coming to it was so cold. It was so unpleasant. I didn't know anything about the American custom. I didn't speak the language a little bit. I mean, my language was to take the American to whorehouses. So, I could not use that slang for what I was about to, for a conversation. So, and I didn't know anything about food, and I love food. So for 3 days, I ate apple pancake and clubhouse sandwiches. That's all I knew how to order. And I hated Chicago. I mean, I really hated it. So I was going to go back to France after a week. And I said, well, I had met those people of Ernie's Restaurant. So I came, and Bella was in Hollywood. So I said, well, so I came to San Francisco, worked at Ernie's Restaurant. I was 32 years old. I became a general manager. At 32 years old, I became general manager of a restaurant that was probably the most successful restaurant in San Francisco, because I had a good background and I knew what I wanted. And do you want me to keep on telling you my?
I'm sure it's been documented, but what we're really trying to get is your Jewish experience.
Yes.
So maybe no one has asked you, how did being Jewish affect all the success you've had? What's the connection? Is there a connection between being Jewish and being so successful for you?
Being successful because I was Jewish, I don't think so. I don't know. I wish I could answer that question. Very often it happened, I should say very, but often it happened that, oh, you're Jewish. But that's the extent. The two brothers who own Ernie's Restaurant, who were really my big, and they introduced me to life in America, were the most delightful guys. One of them was married to a Jewish lady, and she was delightful, but I didn't feel I wish I could tell you that my reason for being successful was the help of a Jewish. No, it's not.
I think maybe what's in your life.
Yeah, so talk about the experience of your experience of survival connected to the Jewish experience of having to survive.
Yeah, well, the survival, I think it comes, you're born with it. My life has been, from my youth, has always been, living the day and, hoping that the tomorrow will come. It's always survival. When I came to America, I guess it's the story of many Jews who have no excuse or no reason for really why they have become successful. But I think the success of the Jewish people, the Jewish faith, is survival. The name of it is survival. And I think the part of my success is that my survival wanted to be so, I wanted to have that survival that I was afraid not to have. and that I finally had. And I think that was a big part of my success.
Could I'd like to. Okay, so we're ready to begin.
So, again, what did the headmaster do to single you out, and how do you know it was because you were Jewish?
And so maybe start with when
The
I
headmaster.
Was, when I was at the hotel school.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the hotel school had that headmaster who I know was anti-Jew because his name was Monsieur Soleil, Maurice Soleil. And I know he was Jew because we were about, at that hotel and restaurant school, there were 3 departments: the dining room, the kitchen, and the front desk of a hotel. And I chose the dining room. And the people that had chosen the dining room with me were 90% Arabs. We were about 20 students, I would say 20, and maybe 15 of them were Arabs. And he had much closer relationship with those Arabs than he had with me. And I heard him say "Sale Juif" one day. This is how I defined that the man was an anti-Jew. I said, he always told me, I don't know what you do in that school because you'll never amount to anything in that industry. And I think I called my hotel the Auberge Du Soleil because of that son of a gun. His name was Maurice Soleil. So just to remember him, to show him, even though he's long gone, to show him that I did make something out of my life. He by many situation, I was aware that the man was not very fond of me, and in spite of he was not the headmaster. He was in charge of the dining room department. The headmaster was Monsieur Langlais, a delightful old man, and he used to tell me, "Mon petit, my kid, don't listen to him. Just do what you do, because I know you're going to do well." And so he pumped me up, and this is pumping me up, and I finished second in the school and the dining room department. So I did show him that I was going to be able to do something, even though he was totally against it.
Did you have other experiences of being singled out because you were Jewish and then fighting back even harder?
Fighting back because I was Jewish. From the time I went to the hotel and restaurant school, I don't know, are you asking me mostly for the hotel and restaurant
Just
school?
in your life,
Or
in
in my life?
Paris and London?
And my life. No, but each time when I lived in London, the owner of the restaurant, the restaurant was the Mirabelle in London. It was the Mirabelle. And the owner was Jewish. And because the owner was Jewish, I was very proud to work with him. It was one of the most beautiful restaurants in London. It was by far the #1 in London. So I was very proud to be part of it. Not only be part of the restaurant, but because the man, his name was Irvin Schleien, I remember his name, because he was Jewish. So it made me kind of proud to be part of it.
When you came to the United States, to San Francisco, you said you didn't meet any Jews from North Africa or the Middle East. There were no Sephardic or Mizrahi Jews. Were you connected to the Ashkenazi Jews at all? Or did you feel just so different from them?
When I first came to America, I don't think, I really, it's quite some time, it's over 50 years ago. I definitely know that there was I didn't know of any French-speaking people, even more so with the Jewish, because I did not know any Jews from North Africa, not whatsoever. I think I was one of the first one to come in 1960, because in those days was just the end of the war in Algeria, so all the Jews were still living there, and some of them were starting to leave Algeria, but none of them had come that far to America. So I think I probably was one of the pioneer and Sephardic Jews from Algeria. So I did not know or none of them. No, I knew some. As I said, the 2 brothers who owned the restaurant that I worked at One of them was married to a Jewish lady who I knew she was Jewish, but not from. She was from South America, from family from South America. But that was the extent of my knowledge of the Jews around. But none of them Sephardic.
Did you ever experience discrimination in the United States because you were Jewish?
Not openly, but the
Can you repeat
what
the question?
what you know.
Wait, can you repeat the question? I never experienced discrimination. Yeah.
I never did experience discrimination, but I could believe when I heard stories that I was told about a certain club, certain hotels, certain were forbidden to Jews. Personally, I never openly, I never dealt with a situation where I was forbidden to do something because I was a Jew. No.
And
Hold on a second. Can we go back to, or in passing, you said he physically beat you?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that, how that happened, whether it was in front of the class or after class, or tell Sarah exactly what happened?
Yes, Mr. Soleil was, he was an alcoholic, smoked a lot, and sometime, more than once, he was so angry with me for what, I don't know, because I was just Claude, I was that young Jewish kid, and more than once he beat me. And this is when Monsieur Langlais, the headmaster, told me, I went to his office, and he said, Claude, just put up with it, the things are going to get better. But yes, the man was angry against me. Why? I still remember that. Then that was 1948. I still have his image, red face with alcohol that he drank. He was an ugly guy.
And you said he was friendly with the Arab students, but he himself was not Arab?
No, God, no, he was Parisian.
Right, okay.
So
Why do you think he was friendly with them and so anti-Semitic at the same time?
Why was he friendly with the Arabs? I don't know. I mean, still, why things are happening today the way they are happening with people who are so friendly with Arabs after all they're doing. I don't know. He had 2 or 3 kids, Arabs, student, that he was very fond with, who he enjoyed their company. Very often after lesson, he would sit down with them and tell jokes. So I could feel that. But with me, was not the case.
did you have Arab friends in the class? Were your classmates nice?
Yes. Were they real friends? I don't know. But we were friends.
When you were in Paris.
Do you want to get that as a standalone? I mean, you didn't answer.
Yeah, maybe you should say I was friends with the Arab kids in the class.
Yeah. Well, when we were in the classroom, I had few of the students whom I was close with, and those students were Arabs. So there was, we never felt the difference. I mean, now years have gone by. I can remember, that we were close, but were we really that close? I don't know. But then, in those days, they were Arabs, we were Catholic, Jewish, but there was no differences.
What about in Paris? Did you experience anti-Jewish discrimination in Paris?
Well, Paris has always been like it is today. The Jews are not, in Paris and France, there is discrimination much more obvious than it is in the United States. And it's wide open. In France, I did find the discrimination, like when I worked in Paris, and Maxime's, which was, in those days, Maxime's was the place in the world. And they couldn't believe that as a Jew, I would be working in a restaurant, because there was not such a thing as a Jew working. Why a Jew not working in a restaurant? Because you are Jewish. So that was not even thinkable. So, and yes, I faced some situation in France where I was put aside because I was Jewish.
Like what? Can you tell me about one of those experiences?
No, God, it's in general. Can I tell you one single situation right offhand? I cannot. But I know for a fact that I felt in Paris. If you ask me, did I feel that way since I came to the United States? I will say no. And Paris, I'll say yes. You ask me to give you an example, I cannot.
You said specifically though that an attitude of like, ugh, a dirty Jew is gonna touching this food or anything like. Was it that kind of reaction?
No, because working in a restaurant industry, in those days, I'm talking about quite a few years ago, there was not that many Jews working in a restaurant business and as a cook or as a head waiter. Much less in places like Maxime's in Paris, because it was a very top of the line. I remember fighting there a couple times with waiters because we would sit down in our dining room, which was a little room before service. And a couple times I ran into a fight because I was Jewish with the other waiters. In our industry today, like you have in London at a restaurant called the Fat Duck, which is known as one of the top restaurants in the world. The chef owner is a Jew. In my days, you never went in a restaurant where the chef or the head waiter was Jewish. That didn't exist. I don't know why. Maybe the Jews didn't like to work in restaurant business. Why is it? I don't know. Because we made good money. But as I said, and I want to emphasize that, because in those days, cooking was far from being open to the Jewish people. I don't know why, but today you have some of the great chefs. I mentioned the one at the Fat Duck, but there are some other one really well known in Germany and who are Jewish and who are chefs, young people. That's great.
So
Yeah, I'm sorry, let me just follow up to that. No, okay, so we need to get you to say that specifically. So you were the only Jew you knew
Definitely.
working in that business. Okay,
Definitely.
you have to say that very clearly for us on camera.
Well, with all the restaurants that I worked at, I didn't work in that many places. I worked in Algiers at l'Hôtel Saint-Georges, in Paris at l'Hôtel Maurice and then Maxime's, in London at the Mirabelle, and I can tell you, out of all those 4 top places in the world, never a Jew that I worked with a Jew. That was non-existent. I know for a fact that I was the only Jew working in those places, and any of those restaurants.
That's good. I think that says a lot.
Yeah, but I don't. But I would. I don't know. I'll.
Well, then tell to Sarah in your own words, because I understand you see a little differently. But
Yeah, I do see it differently. My faith. You want me to keep on going?
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Tell
yeah.
Sarah.
My faith of Jewish, I think, has nothing to do with my success. When I first opened the restaurant in San Francisco, L'Étoile restaurant, that restaurant had gone bankrupt 4 times just before I took it over. I was at Ernie's restaurant, and the owner of Dolly Fritz was her name, of the hotel where the L'Étoile was, contacted me and asked me if I wanted to take the restaurant over. I said yes. And so I went, did the opening of that restaurant, and it was an instant success. Now, why was that restaurant instant success? I have to give little credit to my ex-wife, who was a #1 model in San Francisco. And so she knew the whole set. She knew everybody in San Francisco. So with her and knowing everybody, the opening of the restaurant was a great success because all the people that she knew, all the gorgeous lady, all the gorgeous guys. But then it went on for 24 years. So she had nothing to do anymore. But she gave me a big push. But was it? I don't think the Jewish faith has anything to do with it, except, as we said earlier, the survival. I wanted to be successful. I want to make a go. Is that the reason? Maybe.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of what we're maybe proposing,
the Jewish spirit, to not just to succeed,
the
but
culture and these more harder to see things, but the patterns.
I was never asked that kind of question, and I would have a hard time putting it in words, what I feel in my heart. You're asking me, what, I don't even know what you're asking me about Jewish faith. I understand between the religion and the faith, it's different. I have, I believe in the religion a little bit, but much more on the faith. But am I able to express it in words? Is something that I feel, something that, my wife, who's not Jewish, but lived in Israel, and because of her, I'm getting closer to the Jewish faith. But I had that in me. I want to. Now we do every Friday night, we light the candles and we do the prayer. And it's not that my knowledge of the faith, but my will of being one of the Jews, one of the. Can I express this in word? I don't. No, I cannot. It's there. It's there. It's with me, and it's definitely, very, very much so in me. But I wish I could express this in word. I cannot.
So with the more tangible things,
Like what?
Like you said, your Algerian Jewish heritage that you've held on to through all of your transitions in life, and that you've passed down, but more so that you've held on to. Like you said, the music. Is there anything else that
like even maybe melodies that you use for the blessings, or even the way you pronounce
or sayings?
The blessings they tend to be different for Mizrahi.
Well, reading the Kaddish, it's totally different.
Go ahead. Okay.
Then the difference in prayer when you do the prayer, and I'm getting used to it because it's been so many years that I go to a synagogue here in Napa, where they are not Sephardic, but they are, how do you call the Ashkenaz? Thank you, Ashkenaz. So their way of pronouncing the prayer are different, and one that I'm very much aware of, unfortunately, it's the Kaddish that I have to read. Like on Sunday, it's going to be my brother 1 year anniversary. I'm going to be reading the Kaddish at the cemetery. But the reading of the Kaddish is totally different. Not totally, but it is different than the Ashkenaz. So they are different. The way of when they not singing, the cantor, their way of pronouncing is different than the Sephardic. But you're getting used to it.
So why are you returning back to your Judaism now? What are you hoping to find in it now? Because you said you're going to synagogue again and you're lighting the candles, and for a long time you.
Well, I think that comes with age. When you get, I hear it from many people that when you come to age, you come back to your roots. You want to go back. You try to go back to remember and to get closer to what you believe in. In my case, it's the Jewish faith, and why do I want to be married? I'm glad that, as I told you, that the cemetery in Saint Helena has a plot now that is Jewish, and I'm glad that I'm going to be buried there. Why? I don't know. It's just the thing that my fate, my parent. No, not my parent, because my parents were not that religious. It's just me. It's just my faith, you know.
So your story, even though you weren't a refugee, but is one of 850,000 Jews from North Africa and the Middle East who pretty much had to leave. And even if you stayed in Algeria, you would have left as probably a refugee. Can you reflect on the story of Jewish refugees from Arab countries, its place in history, and maybe why it hasn't been talking about, why it's important to tell the story?
Well, you know, I'm trying to escape all the question. The question that you're asking me is about the escape of the Jews from North Africa. The thing is, I left North Africa in 1953, way before anything started. I was in the United States in 1960, where all the North African had to come. So I did not personally experience any of that because I wasn't among. I could, I could tell you what my sister did. She was married to a very wealthy, had a well-to-do situation in Algiers, and they had closed the door and left and lost everything. But this is something that I did not experience myself because I was already here. So to tell you stories about how those people felt, I don't know, because I was already long gone.
But it is part of your community, even though it's not your experience, it's your family and your neighbors and the other people in the region from where you're from. So why is it important? Why do
Hold
you
on
think
one
it's
second.
important?
Algeria anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and back up and begin again.
The what?
If you can start with your sister's story.
Well, you can start where you did if you want.
Yeah.
There's no
But
Jews
I
around.
would also
I just
put
wasn't.
the year next to it, like in the year such and such, when the Jews of Algeria had to leave and give whatever. And then, for example, my sister. But I would put some year, even though you were not living there.
Okay.
If you can.
We'll
I'm
try.
ready.
We'll try. Well, it's, personally, I did not have personal relation with the people, the Jews that had to leave Algeria. The one that my families that, have gone through it. I know, for one, my sister, who had to leave Algeria just from one day to another. Her husband was a very successful and very wealthy man, and like many, many other Jews in Algeria. And one day they had to close the door, hoping to come back the following month or the following week. And they left everything there. And there are many other family. I have a cousin who had a big brasserie, a real big brasserie. And he closed the door, hoping to come back the following week again, because he had a threat by the FLN, which was the Arab movement, and he had to leave, and so many situations. But personally, I did not have, because I said again, I was gone. Many years had gone by. I left 53, so by the time the situation happened, I was long gone.
So what about the extinction of the community? There's no Jews who will be born in Algeria.
Very sad.
Can you talk about the extinction of the
It's very sad. It's very sad. Well, there are so many great memories. There are so many great memory. Why are they great memory? Because we were young and we were happy. We had nothing whatsoever, but we didn't know any better. So we were happy with the sun, with the piece of bread that we had. I'm not trying to make it like we were, beggars. We were not. We were very happy with what we had. So those souvenirs, this is, like the music. I avoid listening to that music because it makes me very, very sad. Why does it make me very sad? because, you know, I remember, first of all, I remember of all my parents, father and mother were alive, and the people that raised us from one side or the other, from my father's side or my mother's side, and all those people have gone. L'école hôtelière, even though the headmaster, Mr. Soleil, didn't like the Jews, but I was happy. I was happy there. I did not mind. The guy hit me, the guy, but I knew I was going to do it, and I didn't mind. So all those moments, you know, I used to do the flowers in the Hotel Saint Georges. I used to go to the farm with my scooter and get the flowers, and on my way back, I would stop to my aunt and give her a bouquet of flowers and go back to the hotel and do all the flowers. So all those moments, I was young. I was. So listening to that music bring me back to all those memories that are good memories. I think it's within the Sephardic Jews. I think we are much more sentimental, much more. We get very sentimental, and we cry easily. I cry very easily.
So again, just to touch on the extinction of the broader Jewish communities throughout North Africa. I know it wasn't your experience, but can you just talk a little bit about the extinction of these Jewish communities throughout North Africa? Connecting your sister maybe to the larger...
Or just your feeling about that. We didn't really talk yet about, we mentioned it very quickly in passing, but that there won't be Jews born in Algeria.
Yeah, I mean, it's very sad when you think that, Algeria is finished. It's another world. I'm still part of that other world. And it's very sad to know there's not going to be any more Jews coming from Algeria. It was a beautiful country when we lived there. So just to think of it being finished, it's another era, we're turning the page. It's a very sad thing to do, to turn that page. You don't want to turn the page. You want to go on for generation and generation. But it's the way it is.
So I think I only have one more question left. And basically that's just...
Sarah,
Yeah.
may I?
Yeah, of course.
Well, in 1985, when I wanted to take my daughters back to Algeria to be, for them to see where I was raised and, where I was born. And we went to the cemetery, even though the taxi that we took was against it. He said, sir, I don't think you should go, because the Jewish cemetery is right in the heart of the Village Nègre. And the Village Nègre is the Arabic neighborhood. So I said, yes, I want my daughter, I want to take them to the cemetery. We go into the cemetery, they've put a road in the middle of the cemetery. And so years had gone by, and I was trying to remember where my father and mother were there. So we went and looked all around, and everything was wilderness. I mean, it was totally horrible. And I couldn't find and this, I swear, it's the truth, really the truth. I could not find any of it that could tell me where my mother or father was buried. And at one time, my daughter Bettina said, Papa, she was standing on top of my mother's tomb. But honestly, she was standing on top of my mother's tomb. I mean, the three of us started crying. And we had found what we had come for. So we went right back to the taxi and took off and came right back to France.
And what else about being there? Because you said you had planned to stay for a week, and after 3 days you left. So what were the things that made you decide no more?
Well, when we arrived in Algeria, I mean, seeing everything was so dirty, everything was so bad. And I wanted to take my girls to neighborhood that I was raised, but I could not recognize anything. I told the taxi to take us to the best hotel because I tried to make a reservation from here. I could not. So he took me to he took us to a hotel, and in my room I swear I could not sleep at night because they were totally full of bad worms. You know, all over on the wall you can see the cafard. I mean, it was so dirty, it was so bad, and then the food was so horrible. And one day, we stayed there 3-4 days, but we had nothing to do. The weather was so gorgeous. So I said, you know what? I took a taxi and I told my girls, we're going to go to the beach and spend a couple hours there. And then so at least it changed our mind. So we take the taxi, and I tell the taxi to come and pick us up in 2 hours. And we are at the beach, and it's bottles, can of Coke, a carton of cigarettes. I mean, it was horrible. We are at the beach. Within half an hour, there is a circle of young Arabs around us. And because my 2 girls are blonde, 2 blonde American kids, and those Arabs were looking at them, and they were making comment I couldn't understand, but my daughter could not understand. So, and I had told the taxi to come and pick us up in 2 hours. So here we were in the middle of nowhere. And so we went, and I told my girl, let's get dressed. And we left. The Arabs were just making fun of us. They were not nasty or brutal, but nasty remark for nothing. So I took my 2 girls, and we went back and sat on the freeway waiting for the taxi to come and to get us. So, you know, all those stories, plus the food being bad. The Arabs were very pleasant. The taxi, who really he stayed with us because, I was being a good customer. He was extremely courteous. All the Arabs were. I had a chance because we were, as I said, we're supposed to be there for a week or 10 days. So I made a lot of dollars changed into a dinar. They would not even change me the money back into French money. They said, no, you cannot take that money out. So I had to give it away. But I just wanted to leave the country. It was it was a horrible, dirty, everything. It was a horrible experience, except for that moment, which was worth the trip of my daughter being on top of my mother's tomb.
And you didn't try to find the synagogue at all or anything like that?
I'm sorry?
Did you try to find anything else, either the synagogue or the oven?
No. I tried to find where we were, where we...
look at Sarah.
Yeah. When I was in Algeria, beside going to l'Hôtel Saint-Georges when I worked, going to l'École Hôtelière, where I went, I took my girls there. I tried to find the street where we lived, but the houses looked so different. I went to the building, I looked at it, but I told my girl it's where I lived, and it's very. They do like donut. They call the beignet, and they do it in front of you. And I wanted my daughter to try that, so I went to a place. The guy sitting like that, and with a pan of hot oil, and he's baking that, he's cooking that, frying that. And so I asked for 3 of them, and he take a newspaper, dirty newspaper, and he put the beignet on top of it and give it to us. And my daughter said, "Papa, I'm not going to eat that." Because it's totally different. Those are situations that reminds me, to me, was, so what? What's the big thing?
You had mentioned that you lived in the Rue des Juifs, which next time you go back.
I don't know. I didn't look at it.
Oh.
I remember being it, but was it still? I don't think so, because they had changed most of the. They had changed most of the streets now. When I went back when I was there in Algeria, and mostly in Oran, because Algiers, I went to the cemetery in Algiers. I had an uncle that was buried there. And somehow the cemetery in Algiers was well kept. People, I don't know why, but in Oran was totally horrible. And I went back to the neighborhood where I used to live, and it was almost not recognizable because, first of all, they had changed all the streets address. The street, like you have those plate on the corner of each street with the name of the street. They had changed that from French Rue de la Révolution, Rue des Juifs, and to a Muslim name. So I felt like I was not home anymore. I was not coming back to a place where I used to live. I was coming back to a foreign country, totally foreign country.
It's good.
Yeah, that's good. So I guess my last question is, what have you done to hold on to your Jewish Algerian identity? What have you? But I think I might have asked you that already. What have you carried with you?
Except all the Algerian music that I have that I don't want to listen to because it makes me too sad. Excuse me?
Oh, no, go ahead. But you can say I've carried, you need to answer or repeat the question when you answer.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I carried from that I have from my memories of being from North Africa it's all in my mind. There's somebody that said one day, one thing that nobody can take away from you is your souvenir, is your memories. And this is locked in my brain. Nobody can touch it. Nobody can tell me what to do with it. Nobody can tell me how to use it. It's in my mind. And those are the only thing that I think I have left from my beautiful souvenir from Algeria, because it is beautiful souvenirs. But I live here away from civilization. I live in my little country, and there's not that many Jews, except there must be. They're putting a cemetery. So, but I'm not. I travel a lot, and I don't see that many people.
Well, thank you for inviting us into your home. Do you guys have anything else? I think we got Nuremberg laws that existed. Maybe you can say something along the lines, I know the Nuremberg laws existed, but I don't remember because I was young.
Yeah, I do know that. I do know, read about it, the Nuremberg law, but in those days I was much too young. Not only I was much too young, but my father, because of who he was not very involved, and that, in those days he was not very involved in the Jewish history. So no, I'm very much aware of that, but I probably was much too young to remember.
I read in the article that was recently published about you that when the Americans came into Algeria, you went and you were courting them and selling them food, I think. Do you remember?
Taking them to whorehouses,
yeah. Taking them to the brothels.
I was 9 years old.
So can you tell me your memories of when the British and the Americans came into Algeria, if you have any?
Oh yes, I do. Yes, I remember when they first. I remember first of all when they were bombarding Oran, the American and the English, because they were trying to take over. But I remember it very well when they invaded Oran. I was in Oran in those days. It was happiness was happening. I mean, we were joyful to have them, and the American was so, even then the American soldier was so gentle, was so cheerful. They were so happy to be there, and so we started to make business with them, and making black market. Black market what? We would sell chewing gum or buying chocolate and selling them, and we used to sell them perfume. I used to the little teeny bottle of Channel Number 5 was the big perfume. So I used to put water with saffron and put on the cork, put a little perfume, and I would sell it I was 9, 10 years old. I was already, and then on my spare time, I used to take them to places where they could enjoy themselves with young ladies. And but there was happy moment. There were happy moment. They would come at home to my aunt, because my sister Josette was a great dancer, and she was, and she used to dance with us with the soldiers. Some of them were Jewish, and they knew we were Jewish. That I remember. And so it was a family atmosphere. You know, those soldiers, they were away from home, and they found a home in our place. So they would come, you know, sometime and eat a little bit of couscous or whatever, and would dance with the music. It was a happy time.
Did you, in that time after World War II, talk about Israel? Did you know that Israel was going to be established? Was there Zionism for you in your life?
Now, again, in 1942, you know, I was 8 years old. No, I was 9 years old. No, I honestly, I don't remember. I remember a little bit of talk about it, but I could not make a comment, or I do not remember. I was really much too young.
But you do remember 1948 when Israel became...
When 1948, yes. But this is at the same time. 1948 happened at the time that I went into a hotel restaurant school. And then when I was at a hotel restaurant school, I was away from, I lived there. I was an intern. And so I was totally locked out of civilization because I was totally concentrating on what I was about to do with my life.
So what did you know in 1948? Were you happy? I mean, how was the experience of knowing that there was now a Jewish country in the Middle East? What?
I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you yes, I was happy. But I didn't know any better. To be honest with you, I'm much more aware today. Excuse me. I'm much more aware today of the Jewish state than I was then. You know, I was too young and I was too involved and trying to do something with my life, even though I was only 12 years old.
Wow, that's so amazing. You were so young. Did you know then how your life was probably more challenging than other 12-year-olds? Were you aware?
No, because was I challenged? Challenged? No, because I had gone already through so much. You know, I remember a little story just to give you a little. I used to work tailor. First, I did black market. Then I worked in a pastry shop, and by the time this is before I was 14 years old, I had done all those different things. Then I worked as a tailor, and I remember as a tailor during the holidays like Yom Kippur, people would buy a new suit. They had to wear a new suit. So with my boss, we worked a lot late at night, and often we worked in his home. And I used to love to work in his home because I knew that the following morning I would have coffee with hot milk and a slice of bread with margarine. I mean, that was a dream like. So this to give you a story of or an idea of how tough life was up to when I went to school. Was I aware that what's going to be my future? No, I was not. But I was ready to face up to it.
So how did you face up to it? How did you prepare yourself?
You know, somebody told me that I was how did I face up to my life? Well, somebody told me that I was a very, very lucky guy because all my life, I've always been at the right place at the right time. And this is, and it's still happening now, even though I'm not that involved with my businesses anymore. But it's just each time I have an opportunity, it's there. So that's it.
So when you went to the hotel school when you were 14 years old, what happened after that? You were 14 and then you went to France after that. How did your life evolve after that?
When I was age 14, I was living in Oran, and my brother had already moved to Algiers. So my brother sent me a letter, and he said, you know, I enrolled you to a hotel and restaurant school because you are wasting your life in Oran, 14 years old. I was already wasting my life. So I enrolled you to that hotel and restaurant school. I did, and that was a great thing. While I was at the hotel and restaurant school, the headmaster was an anti-Jew. I mean, the guy hated Jews. He was an alcoholic, and he beat me. I mean, very often I stayed at that school a little over a year, and the guy was really an ugly guy, with me anyway. But I still, against his will, I graduated number 2. So then after that, I went and worked in a hotel in Algiers, which was Hotel Saint-Georges. It was a big palace. I worked there for a few years until I was enrolled in the army. Then from the army, it's when I met my first wife, when I about to go to the army. Then after the army, I was working as a butler for a general, and the general got upgraded to a 5-star, and he was sent to Paris and asked me if I would want to follow him in Paris. I followed him in Paris. See, this is what I mean by being the right time at the right thing. I went to Paris with him, and I was freed. I was liberated from the army in Paris because I was in Paris. And then I found myself in Paris, and life went on. That was 1954, 5.
Did you ever go back to Algeria after that?
I went back to Algeria before coming to United States. Just before coming to United States. And in those days I was with Bella Darby, and I wanted her to meet my family. So we went back to Algeria, spent a couple of weeks there, and Oran and Algiers. And that was the extent of it. I went back in Algeria in 1985 with my 2 daughters, with my 2 American daughters. Again, my daughters were growing up, and I want them, before they started to work on their own life, I wanted them to see where I was born, where my parents were buried. And so I went back there, and it was horrible. It was horrible because what had become to Algeria, which was a beautiful country, it probably was a beautiful country then because I didn't know any better. But then, you know, after living in Paris, after living in London, after arriving in the United States, my view had changed. So when I went back to Algeria with my 2 girls, I was very, very disappointed. The palace where I worked, which was, it's known as being the palace in North Africa, was absolutely a jewel. I did not recognize the place, what the Arabs had done to it. And the cemetery where my parents are buried, they had cut the cemetery in 2 and put a road in the middle of the cemetery. So it was a hard time finding my mother's tomb. So it was not very happy. We were supposed to be there for a week, and after 3 days, I told my girl, let's go back. And we went back to France. So yes, I did go back to Algeria, but not very happily.
So there's so many immigrants that aren't successful. There's so